Thank you.
All right, it is 6 o'clock on the dot. It is the first time I've ever been on time for anything in my life. Andy laughs. He knows it's true.
Funny because it's true.
It is.
Actually, that's not true at all. You're on time for a lot of things.
Well, no. Many things. Anyway, welcome to the Living Earth Show's last performance of the year of our Lord 2020. Dear God. What a wonderful year it's been.
Just flew by.
Excited to have yet another one like it. But we are joined for this installment of the Living Earth Show EP special by Damon Waitkiss, composer of the North Pacific Garbage Patch, which we're going to tune in for a YouTube premiere 15 minutes from now. There'll be like links to everything that we need in the chat, so you shouldn't need to wonder where to go. And also,
but if you still do, don't be shy about asking.
Yes, totally. And we're also joined by Quinn Collins, whose piece is going to premiere at 6:45. Stamp him in a stone mortar till his bones are broken.
That's correct. Every single word. And then in the right order and everything.
It was great. And I was even thinking which words were capitalized in my head as I read it. But again, we're going to just chat a little bit and take any questions, like anytime somebody has anything to ask. But we're going to tune into YouTube premieres at 6:15 Pacific for Damon's piece, The North Pacific Garbage Patch. And then again, we're always going to come back to this webinar, so we'll leave it open the entire time. And at 6:45, we're going to go check out our second premiere by Quinn Collins. Also as a YouTube premiere, and we'll be sharing links for that through the chat. We put these two pieces together, and I wonder what Andy's going to think about this as an opening salvo, because I can see him grimacing already. I'm projecting. We had started making a second album after High Art, which we released in 2013. Which was already, I mean, by the time we released our first album, it was 3 years into our history as an ensemble. And we'd started putting together a second album, and Quinn and Damon were both a part of that project on separate pieces. And for a couple of reasons, it just never came out. So it wasn't until the pandemic that we had a format that we were really happy with to present both of these pieces as singles. So we're happy to bring everybody back together again and play them for you, because we think that they pair really nicely. Sweet. Did that phone call just come through the Zoom?
Yeah.
That's
awesome. It did.
Just the ring though.
Oh, makes your life better.
That's so cool. Let that be a lesson to everybody. But we had Damon's piece was one of the first pieces that we ever commissioned, the North Pacific Garbage Patch, where Andy and I started playing together 10 years ago, almost 11 now, in 2010. And at that time, we knew that we wanted to have a duo project, and we wanted to be a commissioning ensemble. We wanted to be a big kid chamber ensemble. And it was Andy said okay, well, I'll commission 3 people, you commission 3 people. And I had met Damon through the best roommate I ever had, Jacob Cooper. No, Jacob Kramer. Sorry, Jacob. And also through John Russell. And Quinn we met years later, also through John Russell. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that guy is a walking ball of glue. He just brought us all together here. I'm just scrolling through casually to see if you made it. Nope, but I see Jacob Kramer. Hi, Jacob.
Well, Travis, I would love to ask you a couple questions, sort of Well, actually, I have questions for both you and Damon before we hear this piece. Like, the first thing for you, Travis, I mean, this was a long time ago, but I want to know what drew you to like Damon in the first place. Like, what in his work, in his like the way he kind of created stuff, like what drew you specifically to reach out and try to get something new from Damon?
Well, at the time, like I had known Damon like a couple of ways. One was just through mutual composer and music friends, and then the other was through Damon's band, Jack the Clock. Because at the time I was playing in an Oakland band, like in the early years of the Living Earth show. Andy and I were playing like in a million bands. I was playing in this band called MirthCon, and Damon was thought of very highly by a lot of people that were in that band MirthCon. So it's
We did a show together too, I think.
yeah. I remember that like
Like,
I think like maybe the
Rios.
last show that MirthCon ever played.
Yeah, we sort of dragged you out of the closet or whatever into to play with us again. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was awesome, and it was a treat. But like Damon had just like come up like many times about like somebody that wrote really cool music. And this was this piece. I mean, we'll save like talking about some of the nuts and bolts until everybody gets a chance to listen to it at the premiere in 10 minutes.
9 minutes.
9 minutes. But what else were you gonna ask me?
Well, okay. So the question that I have for you, Damon, well, actually, I have a two-part question for you, which like, how did you approach this piece? Like, how do you like, especially as someone who makes music a lot of different ways, like in bands, but also as a notated composer or whatever? That's the first question. Then I have like a follow-up to that, but if you want to hit that one first, I'm really curious what your
Well, it's hard to remember. It's a while ago, but I think that having written for bands a lot, one of my and also being really interested in writing contrapuntal music, one of the first things I was worried about was how to make this duo of two very different instruments work together in a way that without a bass. It was like I really wanted a bass. I felt like that was going to be challenging. So we got a lot of, I think one of the first things I assumed that I would have to do or wanted to do and hadn't done by myself was work with loops and get loops going on the guitar. So that's how it started. And that's how the piece starts, with these various loops going so that they can play off each other contrapuntally. And then use of the octave effect as well to kind of fill in the low end. And I think that's kind of how I got myself going on it. What was the other part?
So the other question that I have, that's awesome. The other question is like, for people who are like kind of unfamiliar with your work, and maybe even like the style of music that you make in general, I'm curious for you, like as you've kind of gone back to this piece, like how would you kind of like advise someone who might be unfamiliar with your work and this sort of thing in general? Like, how would you like guide them to approach a piece like this?
Oh, I don't know. Intuitively, immersively, I guess. I'm not. This piece doesn't. I'm really proud of how it came out, but it also feels totally. I'm mostly a songwriter, and I usually write with lyrics in mind, and kind of. It's a very different approach to, particularly since I wrote this piece. I've really kind of gone into Jack of the Clock, whole hog, and done a lot. Done very little composition for groups outside of my own projects. So it's kind of an outlier too, stylistically. It's really heavy, and I love that. It really kind of, I don't know where, as I said in the notes, I don't know where it came from, and I love the way it went, and something about what you guys brought to it. It went in.
I got one more question about that.
There was, and hit it, and then I just want to make sure that I have time to answer Jacob's question.
Oh, cool. Okay. My last question for you, Damon, is like, and I think this will lead into Jacob's as well, is like, Damon, when you say this is a heavy piece, like what do you mean by that? Like, I mean, as especially for people who might not sort of like exist within like subgenres of metal or whatever. Like, what does heavy mean when you say it?
It's a style, I guess. I'm not much of a genre flinger myself, but it's just a style of production even, and playing, hard hitting on the drums, and a quality of distortion on the guitar, and a kind of a rhythmic drive. I mean, I think all of my stuff has rhythmic drive, but in this kind of way that uses those sounds. That's what I'm thinking of when I say heavy. I'm not seeing these comments. I'm not.
Oh,
You got
there
it, Travis.
one, and the reason that, and Jacob, thanks for asking a question. It's always nice to grease the wheels. Um, they're both kind of like,
Wait, what was the question?
why do these two pieces pair well together? And to us, it's like they're kind of rock and roll pieces, or they're like instrumental rock on steroids, like type seeming things. Like when Andy and I are designing a program, we usually just think about like, we try to like subgenre the stuff that we dabble in on our programs as well. And Damon's and Quinn's pieces were like, have the most like rock and roll duo in them of our repertoire, where there's drums on all of them. I mean, in Quinn's piece, like Andy's, you'll see Andy's playing a vibraphone part, and he's also playing.
There are 5 Andys.
Yeah, like 4. Yeah, there's a ton of Andys because he's duplicating the parts that were written for So Percussion. But they're like, I'm playing distorted guitar. In chamber music, usually, like when I play guitar, like a lot of times it's almost like classical technique, but on a clean electric guitar, or using some sort of like time-based effects or something like that. But for both of these pieces, you'll hear like I'm playing a distorted guitar in a half stack. I'm doing like a pretty straight up the middle, like rock and roll guitar thing, and trying to count like crazy when I'm playing both of them. So they're kind of math. They're a little math rocky to me, or at least that's what I was trying to activate in my own playing when we were realizing both of these pieces.
Like, yeah, what I would jump on with that is like, I think these are both the sort of pieces that like people are a little bit afraid will happen when they see our instruments on a stage. Like when you see an electric guitar and a drum on a stage,
Yeah.
like, well, I mean, we get a lot of like, I think sometimes we can hide from our own instrumental tradition. I'm really excited to talk about this after, because once one hears it, it'll make a lot more sense. But like, I think both of these pieces very much lean into the vernacular history of both the electric guitar and drums and percussion, in ways that are kind of like, yeah, that explore the non-classical histories of both of those instruments. But we should probably hop over to the video.
Yep, we're going to go over there. I've asked Courtney, our managing director extraordinaire, to drop the YouTube premiere link, which she did promptly. Thank you. Into the chat.
So, in the chat. So we're going to leave this open, right? Like we're going to leave when that piece is over, premieres in a minute, come back to this webinar. We'll chat for a sec, and then we're going to go straight to Quinn's piece. Yeah, we'll be link hopping.
Yep, and I take it for granted that everybody lives their life on Zoom now. But if you are unfamiliar with Zoom, in the center of the bar on the bottom, there's a chat button, and if you click it, the most recent message will be a clickable link to the YouTube premiere, and we will see you afterwards. Thanks for coming, everybody.